Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, we're in for another great episode here tonight. The Pitt football scrimmage, as many of you probably didn't know, Pat Narduzzi talked about it on Thursday and Friday. It's a night game. As of right now, recording this here live, the Pitt football team is actually practicing or scrimmaging right now at Acrisure Stadium. Obviously, I put out a tweet here earlier tonight, but they had a night game playing under the lights. Started at about 8:05 from what my understanding was. Probably going to go about 80 to 100 plays, probably somewhere in between there. Probably not as in-depth as the first one. We'll be able to get more information as of how that scrimmage went. Probably tomorrow, Monday, a little bit into Tuesday, probably we'll work our sources to see exactly what happened in those games. Also, too, tomorrow evening, I believe it will be live. I'm pretty sure it will be live. The Bird Cave. Make sure you guys pop on to the Bird Cave. Myself, Harry Paceros, truly great individuals will be on the Bird Cave. Those guys have done a great job. Again, the Berg, B-U-R-G-H, and then Cave, C-A-V-E. Make sure you guys go ahead and follow them tomorrow. We'll be going live on that show tomorrow with Harry Paceros. Plenty of great different topics, getting ready to talk about the Pitt football season moving forward. But tonight, obviously, you guys now know the scrimmage is going on as we speak right now. They're playing as we speak. But also, Allen Greene posts a tweet at the facility during the spring camp and during the fall camp and working with the Pitt football team. Joan Gable showed up, but also a couple different topics that we've talked about here on the show, that athletics is the front porch to every university, and we've talked about this numerous of times. You guys have obviously talked about it. I've talked about it. But as you can imagine, Allen Greene posting that was obviously a great tweet. Great to see. Again, we'll talk about a little bit of that tonight, why he tweeted that out and why I believe it, because of numerous people I've talked to who work with Joan Gable, work with Allen Greene, and why really the university is in a really good place from top down. It's just now up to Pat Narduzzi to make sure he actually wins now. The pressure's on Pat Narduzzi, I can tell you that, and we'll go into more of that about potentially being on the hot seat later on. If he doesn't perform this year, we'll go into a bunch of that. Also, the college football playoff. The Big Ten consistently brings out just different models. The craziest one probably to date is the 26 to 28 teams college football playoff model that they currently have, and they're going to be trying to talk about more and more as the season goes on. It's been pretty crazy so far to watch it and just to hear this stuff come out here in the last couple of days. It's at its really infancy stage. But if you can imagine 28 teams, and the model would be 7 SEC teams get in, 7 Big Ten teams get in, 5 ACC, 5 Big 12, and then 2 group of 6 between the two. Out of the 2 group of 6s, I think, if I'm not mistaken, would probably be two teams from 2 different conferences they probably allow in there out of the group of 6 potentially, or they just break it up and say, hey, 4 group of 6 teams, or 2 group of 6 teams, and then 2 at-large bids. There's a potential where they have that as well. We'll talk about that tonight and what that means. And that really, at that stage of the game, the end of conference championships. We'll talk about that and the craziness around that. And then plenty of open Q&A here tonight. Obviously, you guys can certainly put in your questions. If you have not done so, hit the like button down below. If you're over on X or Facebook, make sure you head over to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe. And also, if you want to get your question up on the screen before anybody else and skip the line, a super chat button is down below. Make a small donation to the pod, and we'll get you up on the screen. First up, though, as you guys always know, Colonial Beer, the sponsorships of the show. The show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Again, the great collaboration with IC Light. Just stocked up on it. I can tell you this, Steelers played last night. You guys did a phenomenal job of heading over to Colonial Beer. Truly appreciate each and every one of you who support a small business. They're great people, great Pitt men. Both Bill and Alan are tremendous individuals with the Athletic Directors Fund, Alliance 412, season ticket holders. They do the whole thing up and down. Tremendous people. And obviously, when you're in there, make sure you ask for them because they're great to talk ball with. I can tell you that right now. But great customer service. They have a great different selection between your heavier beers or lighter lagers. Plenty of different selections through the top whenever you're in there. And obviously, the place is massive. You guys have seen the pictures I've posted. Make sure you go in there. Support a small business in Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Brian Thompson, a great individual, has a great family, comes from a great family, but guides you, the individual, through the process. A lot different than the larger law firms. Brian takes you through every step you can imagine, especially with the type of issue you have. Doesn't matter. He guides you through the process from beginning to end. And if he doesn't have the answer that you need or the answers you're looking for, he'll be able to put the right people in front of you to make sure that you have the right answers for you. He cares about you, the individual. Larger law firms look at you as a number. Brian looks at you as an individual. Make sure you, again, Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Last but not least, the K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen. www.thekingscraft.com. Obviously, here is the bag. A very cool design. The backwards K, obviously, is for a strikeout looking. Austin's a pitcher, as you can imagine. Obviously, a Mount Lebanon alum. Great individual. Not just saying that he's my brother, but a very good individual who did things the right way. And I can tell you, worked his ass off to get where he is in the Seattle Mariners organization. This is personally, the AK Espresso is personally my favorite because all I need is one in the morning and it gets me going. It's crazy. I was never a coffee guy, and all of a sudden I started having this AK Espresso, and it gets me going in the morning. I can tell you that. Make sure the AK Espresso, go ahead and get that, or the two different other selections they have in there. The K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, www.thekingscraft.com. And again, a number of you guys have reached out to me saying you bought it already and you love it. Could not thank you guys enough for supporting Austin in his venture in the coffee brands. Well, we're in it here tonight. The questions are already stacking in here tonight. Appreciate everyone. WRW Pitt, smash the like button and subscribe to Alliance 412. As always, who stood out in the scrimmage? Unfortunately, we don't know because they are scrimmaging right now as we speak, playing under the lights. I think we'll talk about tonight the depth chart of where things are, injuries. I think there's going to be a very big news conference when it comes up on Monday, potentially even Tuesday. I would say probably more than likely Tuesday because with them practicing tonight, I would imagine they're going to be having off on Monday. I would imagine that. From what Pat Narduzzi said on Friday, there looks to be a number of different injuries. Chris Peak had actually asked a question at the live interview or the live questioning, the Q&A before practice begins, like they do every single day. I happen to be watching it, and Pat Narduzzi is going to have a list of guys. Chris asked about is there any injuries that are going to be out for the year or any time, extended period of time onto that. Pat Narduzzi said he'll be talking about that the next time, obviously just to get everything out there all at once. As it stands here right now, I have heard of injuries. There will be, to my knowledge right now, and this is from sources that are connected to the program, outside the program. There are two significant injuries. There are more than likely, it sounds like, going to be season-ending injuries, and I think Pat Narduzzi alluded to that when that comes up. Obviously, I will allow him to announce those names and what those are, but it seems as if there's going to be season-ending injuries, and I think they're going to be names that we've heard about plenty of different times. And it comes to the physicality of practice. I can tell you this right now: Pitt practices very physically during fall camp. Not so much during the season because it's in season, but during camp, guys really get after it because they're earning a spot. And if you can imagine this Pitt football team right now, as I've said to you guys numerous times, there's a lot of talent on this football team. The excuses for Pat Narduzzi after the 2021, 2022 years, back-to-back in the top 20 at the end of the year for both of those years. Obviously, 2021 was an ACC title. 2022 finishes against UCLA in a bowl game, wins that game, finishes in the top 20. Back-to-back years. But since then, you had the 3-9 season. You had another one after that where, last year you lose 6 in a row to end the season. Personally, there should have been 2 more wins at least in there. A 9-win season should have been in effect there. They shouldn't have lost to Boston College. They shouldn't have lost to Virginia. They should have been able to hold on against Clemson. There's 3 wins right there, but you take one or the other, potentially 2 more wins. It should have happened. But as you can imagine, it's crazy where it needs to, he needs to win now. And I think there's going to be a lot of conversation that we'll be talking about here and throughout the season. But as you guys already know, I've made it well known as well. The backyard brawl is going to be in Morgantown this year. Both teams now have played 3 straight games. The home team has taken it every single time. And this is the one that Pat Narduzzi needs to win. Rich Rodriguez comes onto the scene. He's back at West Virginia. Obviously, they've talked about it numerous of times. This is their Super Bowl going forward. This is the game they care most about. For Pitt, Pat Narduzzi needs to win this game. Why? Because we talk about the environment down in Morgantown, which it'll be hyped. This is the game they're all waiting for on 9/13. This is exactly the game they've been waiting for because this is their Super Bowl every year. It's going to be the sellout that West Virginia has this year. This is a game that Pitt needs to win, though. 70+ new players, whether it's through the portal or guys they've attracted from the high school ranks and they've recruited from the high school ranks. Guys, when you have 70+ new players, plus a new head coach, new offensive staff, new defensive staff, there's absolutely zero reason why Pitt does not win that game. And on paper, Pitt has the more talented team. I think it's crazy how West Virginia fans are predicting a 9, 10, even 11-win season I've seen. Pretty crazy overall, but, it's just wild to even think about. But I can tell you this, Pat Narduzzi needs to show up this year. The talent is there. Second year in the K-Bell offense. Eli Holstein returns. Desmond Reed returns. I expect Jules Goff and Shaqiri and Boozy Turner to have a really big year. Kenny Johnson, Deuce Spann, Blue Hicks, a guy that we continually hear about. Zion Fowler L, C.J. Lee, Raphael Poppy Williams. From my understanding, it sounds like Jordan Holmes, the tight end from Marshall, seems to be a guy that's really 6'3". He's able to move down the football field and matchup nightmare. Him and Jake Overman together. Malachi Thomas is fighting for spots there. A new look offensive line. Looks like Jeff Percy at left tackle. Keith Guvia right now at left guard. He can also play center if he needs to. Lyndon Cooper at center. He's been a lot of attraction this year. Lyndon Cooper has been the talk of the National Football League in terms of guys from PFF. Numerous guys who have rated him as one of the better centers in college football. And then you have B.J. Williams returning, and then at right tackle, Ryan Bayer back to his natural position at right tackle. I think he's going to do a really good job this year, and we've heard a lot of good things out of him, and we'll continue to watch what this offensive line looks like as the season goes on. You guys have heard me say it too. The first two games, I'm not going to be one way or the other when it comes to Pitt. At the end of the day, if they're closer games, I mean, we can certainly complain about it because they should not be close games. Those first two against Duquesne and Central Michigan. But we're going to find out what type of football team this is in week 3 when they go down to Morgantown, West Virginia for the backyard brawl. We're going to find out exactly what type of team this is. And the 11th year, this needs to happen this year. So we'll find out more there. Maddie Panthers 927 just sat down with some – flip this on the TV. Let's fucking go. Maddie, appreciate you, brother. If you obviously up on the big screen, which is pretty awesome. I've heard a number. It's kind of funny, Matt. You bring that up. I've actually had a number of people reach out to me where they put because they have YouTube on the smart TVs now, which are great. Obviously, I have that one here at the house. Again, the smart TVs are awesome. We're able to put YouTube up on the screen and be able to comment and whatnot and watch the show. I truly appreciate it. And Maddie, you've been a major supporter of the show, so I can't thank you enough. Wanted to shout you out there. How many and which freshmen do you expect to burn their red shirt? We'll be talking about that tonight here as well. Tim Bales, a great WVU fan right here. What's up, JJ Tim? Welcome to the show here tonight. Tyler Buchanan, less than 2 weeks away. It's incredible. Well, technically, yep, less than 2 weeks now away till August 30th. We get to face the Duquesne Dukes, the city game. Not in basketball, but in football. It returned in football before it returned in basketball, which is pretty crazy to think about. Does anyone know if the Icy Light is doing Pitt branding on the cans and packaging this year? Tyler, I believe they are, and they actually still have, from what I've seen. Again, here it is right here, and they have it at Colonial Beer over in Bethel Park. Make sure you go over to Bethel Park to Colonial Beer to get yours today. And then, do you think those season-ending injuries will make or break the season? I don't think it will make or break it, but I think it's going to start to have depth concerns. That's kind of where I start to see it. It's kind of I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to put the names out there or anything like that. But I've heard from numerous sources that there are going to be a couple guys out, and I think that there are guys we've talked about. There are guys that were expected to have a really big year. Those names, and we'll see what Pat Narduzzi talks about on Tuesday. I expect him to talk about that on Tuesday with the media, as he talked about on Friday. If you did not see it, he said he would actually put all those lists of guys together that are currently banged up, dinged up, whatever, and talk about it on Tuesday. But those names will be out there pretty soon. So first things first, I thought this was a great question. I'm going to jump into it pretty quickly here. Again, great comment there. How many and which freshmen do you think will burn their red shirt? This is a great question. And I think the number one guy that you look at from the Pitt's perspective that's going to burn their red shirt this year is number one, Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner. That's going to be a guy at the running back position. And I've obviously talked about it now. Me personally, I am very concerned about the running back depth at Pitt right now. You have Des Reed, Juelz Goff, and then Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner. And then you got Jalen Williams that's back there. I think there's one more running back there as well, but they're both walk-ons. After your 3 starting running backs, you start to have a little bit of influx at the running back position. I was a big proponent on trying to go out and get a running back in the transfer portal. I know there were some options out there. They decided they didn't need to. Well, here we are that two incoming freshmen were not going to play this year, coming in with injuries. They're both out. We've talked about that before, but Des Reed can't take 30 carries a game plus catch the ball out of the backfield. Juelz Goff and Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner really need to step up this year. And from anybody that I've talked to, Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner, a true freshman, is truly a star in the making. He's going to have one hell of a year. I think he's going to get a lot of touches. If those three can stay healthy, good for Pitt. I think that solidifies the questions that I have. But when you only have 3 running backs, and we've seen from previous years, especially last year, we went through 3, 4, 5 different running backs. That could be a bit of a concern. That is a concern for me. I think that the question marks that are there'll be some other question marks as stuff comes out, potentially even on the defensive side. But this Pitt defense that we know has plenty of great talent. Obviously, Kyle Lewis, returning All-American. Rasheem Biles, I expect to be an All-American this year. Braylon Lovelace. And then you see guys like Cam Lindsey, the 4-star linebacker out of Aliquippa. I expect him to have a major part in this upcoming season as well. I think that there's a great battle going on at the tight end position between Jake Overman and Jordan Holmes and Malachi Thomas. I expect Max Hunt to redshirt this year. I don't expect him to get on the field. The tight end position really between, Jake Overman, Jordan Holmes, and then officially Malachi Thomas. But number one, Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner is the guy that I expect to see burn his red shirt. Number 2, Tony Kinsler. Tony Kinsler at the wide receiver position has gotten a lot of looks, and I mean a lot of looks when it comes to being on the offensive side of the football. People were talking about, because the room seems to be a little bit more crowded over there with Kenny Johnson, Kateris Blue Hicks. He's another name that's currently there right now. He seems to be popping up. And obviously, Blue Hicks, I expect him to have a great year in the slot. Deuce Spann has worked his way up. CJ Lee, Raphael Poppy Williams. But Tony Kinsler, man, they continually talk about him. He's the second freshman that I really think is going to burn their red shirt this year because of the plays he continues to make on the field. We've heard a lot about him. I think he's going to get a lot of looks this year. He continually makes great catches, which is a really good thing, especially as a true freshman in college football who comes onto the scene and is able to take on quarter-style defense where you're getting press coverage every time. And just in times where you just see the clips, especially, you guys have probably seen, how tight the coverage is. He goes up and makes crazy catches. I mean, that's a really good thing to see. I think those two guys, Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner, because they have to use him. Tony Kinsler at the wide receiver position, I'd say he's another one. And then I think if I had another one on the defensive side of the football, Joshua Gurrier. I keep probably pronouncing his last name wrong. It's not Gurrier. It might be Guerreri. I call him Gurrier. I'll have to look it up. I know Pat Narduzzi talked about it. I'll probably get that wrong a number of different times for the season. But Ja'Kirian Boozy Turner, Tony Kinsler, and then Joshua Gurrier at the safety position. He continues to climb up the ranks and climb up the depth chart so much that Jesse Anderson was officially bumped down to the number 6 safety. He's actually working with the wide receivers right now. They moved him over to the offensive side of the football. Pat Narduzzi talked about that in his press briefings, which was pretty crazy to think about. Speedy Tortoise, I think it's pronounced Gary Air. Thank you. Joshua Gary Air. Thank you, Speedy Tortoise. I appreciate that. Will Jalen Williams get looks due to his familiarity with Bell's offense? Anthony, it's a great question. Great question there as well. He will. I think, especially if a guy gets hurt, God forbid, or needs a time or needs a break. From my understanding, it seems he's going to be a big package guy, especially towards the goal line. He's probably the biggest running back they have there right now. Jalen Williams will get that look. He's a walk-on right now. He'll definitely be that guy that gets a lot of touches within the 10-yard line or within the 20-yard line. That once they enter the red zone, he'll be a guy they touch up on. I think Justin Cook is another guy. He came in as a wide receiver, but because of the numbers that they had at the running back position, they bumped him from wide receiver to running back as well. We've heard a lot about Justin Cook. So we'll continue to watch that. I think whatever comes out of camp, sometimes you take with a grain of salt. because we've heard a lot of times that guys look really, really good. But I think for a guy like Justin Cook, who hasn't played running back since, Pee Wee football, that's a concern for me. I think he's done a good job so far from what the coaches have said, but I think you take it with a grain of salt. We got to watch it and see what it looks like on game day. But those are really those five guys, Desmond Reed, Joel Goff, Jakarian Boozy Turner, Jalen Williams, and then Justin Cook seem to be the guys that they have right off the bat that are going to be playing at the running back position. But as far as freshmen, Jakarian Boozy Turner, Tony Kinsler, Joshua Guerriere, Speedy Torres, appreciate you, brother, correcting me on that. Thank you. Joshua Guerriere, who I think is going to get a lot of playing time this year as a reserve guy, because obviously Cruz Brookins is going to be the one starting safety. Javon McIntyre will also be there. Then you have Joshua Guerriere. Kavir Baines is also back there. That's your fourth guy back there. There's another fifth guy back there that I'm forgetting right now. At the cornerback position, I think, a guy to watch out for who I think has the potential to earn a starting spot is Shadarian Harrison. They call him Drip. I've heard a lot of good things about him out of camp. He has just really turned it on. Came into Pitt with an injury. Wasn't able to play last year. They let him redshirt, allowed him to get healthy. He's really learned this defense. He continually makes high-level plays. He's done a great job. Sean Lee, who comes in as a true freshman, played at a what is the extended schools called? A prep school. Played at a prep school for 1 year. His dad is a Penn State legacy name. Comes into Pitt. Penn State didn't want him. Pitt certainly takes him, and it just, you've heard Pat Narduzzi talk about him. He's just got the it factor and has done a really good job in that press-style defense that Pitt plays. So I think he's done a really good job there as well. Rashawn Murray, he'll be in a reserve role. Tamon Lynham is back here again. I think he's going to be a tremendous cornerback this year. Again, big guy, 6'2", really good length, very physical at the point of attack. I think he's going to be a great job. And he's been a guy that came in here last year from Nebraska, loves this style of defense, which will be a lot of fun and really good for him to watch. So that'll be a fun one. But to true freshmen, I think those are really the three that I have here at that point. The other one that I would have is a question mark. And I have it as a question mark because you don't know how the season goes. But you guys saw last year, how many quarterbacks did we use? In the bowl game, which Julian Duggar should have started, we used 5 quarterbacks last year. So the question mark that I put in there is Mason Heinchel. We heard so much about Mason Heinchel that I think that, again, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Eli Holstein during this camp, that he's fully healthy. During the spring camp, he was not healthy for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and it was kind of noticeable, did not perform well in the first 2 weeks of spring camp. He has done a phenomenal job during fall camp here as we get prepared. We're roughly 2 weeks away from the opening game against Duquesne. He has done a great job. But as you can imagine, guys go through injuries sometimes. We're hoping that Eli stays healthy because I think he stays healthy for all 12 games, Pitt's up for a special season. But Mason Heinchel, if Eli gets hurt, the question mark is really there. I think Cole Gonzalez can certainly go in and play. We've heard a lot of good stuff about him. He knows the offense very well with Cade Bell. Would certainly not be an issue if he went into the ball game, and we've heard a lot of good stuff about him. But Mason Heinchel, man, he would be the second or third quarterback, and I know he's competing with Cole Gonzalez right now. Heart of hearts, unless something happened early on in the season, I would think he'd probably be the second or, probably the second guy, off the bench, unless later on in the season, God forbid something happens later on in the season. I think maybe he might roll to the third quarterback because they don't want to burn his red shirt. But if it's early on in the season, there's a potential that guy gets in the game. And I think Mason Heinchel, I would not be shocked if you see him and Cole Gonzalez get reps against Duquesne, get reps against Central Michigan, especially if Pitt is up big, which I think would be really good to get Mason and those guys out there to watch them live and see how they play against live competition that's not their own team, which I think is a really good thing. But Mason Heinchel would be my fourth guy. But the 3 guys I think overall right away they'll have their red shirts burned is Jakarian Boozy Turner, number 1, because he will play in every game this year as long as he's healthy. He will play every game. Tony Kinsler, I think, is a guy that's going to get a lot more playing time than people think. He's going to rise up the depth chart, I think. And then Joshua Guerriere, I think that's going to be the guy that really gets the red shirt burned, those top 3. And then your question mark at number 4, I'm going to say Mason Heinchel because we used 5 quarterbacks last year. If we use 5 quarterbacks this year, he's going to burn his red shirt. I can promise you that right now. Let's see here. Some more question marks in here before we get into other topics. My man Cathell. Will I be in town for the Louisville game? Hope to meet up, brother. Ironically, last time we met up was when Pitt upset Louisville 2 years ago. I do remember that. I was at that game, as you can imagine. Yep, we were up there. Got to meet a bunch of the Aliquippa guys. Was actually wearing an Aliquippa sweatshirt to that event. We met up at McFadden's after the game. It was a hell of a win. Pretty crazy. That was another huge quarterback thing going on. What was that? Christian Veillere was the quarterback that night, had himself a hell of a night in the Signetti offense, which was pretty crazy. Never would have thought we'd have won that game. Even at that time, I was still calling for Nate Yarnell at that time. But yep, brother, I certainly remember you. We'll certainly meet up again whenever you are up here. You got my Twitter account. Hit me up in the DMs. We'll find a way to get to meet up, brother. You always know I do. Again, it's so cool to meet so many of you guys at the games, in the parking lots before the games. Hopefully, I'm thinking about doing some giveaways again this year. We did ones last year with the Larry Fitzgerald bobbleheads. We'll do something this year again, which will be a really good thing overall to talk to you guys and to get to meet up with you guys and to talk to you guys before the games. And then hopefully next year, I was so crazy busy with work this year. I'm hoping to do and really to work with my sponsor, Colonial Beer, to potentially have a get-together and a meetup during the summertime at the Permanis in South Fayette. It's a really big Permanis. They have a lot of space there, which is why we've actually kind of looked at that place personally, because it's a really big place and a really great group of people could show up. We'll work to do something, because obviously I truly appreciate you guys and want to meet you guys individually, because it means a lot to me to support my podcast, which I do for fun, and to be able to meet you guys, because the show is what it is because of you. So it'll be fun to meet up. Will Daniel Williams get looks here? We talked about that. He will certainly get looks. Great question, Anthony. Gary Air, thank you. Yep, he'll get looks. And then Anthony, the more I look at the schedule, the bigger the Louisville game looks. Clemson, Miami, Louisville, SMU, all play each other. Beat Louisville, and even with a hiccup, the last 2 weeks could be huge. Anthony, I couldn't agree more, man. That game is going to be so big. But the good thing is they have that bye week right before that game. First game, Duquesne. Second game, Central Michigan. Third game, you get that physical football game down in Morgantown against West Virginia, and then you have that bye week. I think that bye week could be huge for them to make sure they clean up the bumps and bruises, get healthy. That game is going to be huge. For me, you go through that season, Louisville's going to be a big game. Florida State, I don't think they're going to be very good this year with Tommy Castellanos at quarterback. Mike Norvell handing off the play calling to their new OC, the head coach at UCF. Why am I drawing a blank on his name, guys? Why am I doing that? Used to be the head coach at Auburn. Horrible with this. I'm just drawing blanks on names tonight, guys. I just got so much information that we had here tonight. But you guys already know. Gus Malzahn. I'm sorry. Gus Malzahn is the new offensive coordinator at Florida State. I don't think they're going to do well this year. I think they're going to have some more issues. They have issues on the offensive line, defensive line, and at the wide receiver position. I've heard that throughout their camp. So, God bless Florida State, man. They started a war, man, and just last year they go 2-10. I don't expect them to do well this year. I think possibly 5-7, 6-6 is where they end up landing. So we'll watch and see more of that, where that goes. But really, brother, that last game, Boston College, will not be an easy game. I think right now, I got Boston College as a loss because they just have Pat Narduzzi's number. Just Boston College, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what their record is or where they're at, and if we're up there or they're down here, they just beat Pat Narduzzi. And until Pat Narduzzi beats them, I can't count that as a win. That's just a fact. So I kind of have Boston College as the hiccup game and the loss. But the last three games, man, we're going to find out. Does Kenny Minchey, the decommitted quarterback from Pitt that went to Notre Dame, does he win that job over Lloyd Carr's son? I'm sorry, Lloyd Carr's grandson. That's going to be a really interesting game to watch and fun overall. Kenny Minchey potentially being the starting quarterback for the University for Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame. We'll watch and see what he does this year. He could potentially be here at Acrisure Stadium, but those last three games, you look at those games overall. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, who I expect to be a good football team. Faulkner, their offensive coordinator, I think by far one of the top 5 offensive coordinators. What he's been able to do there has been incredible. I think he's done a great job to this point, and that's why they signed him. To heck, I think he's making a little more, almost just under $2 million. He's making $1.8 million, something like that. But he's done a great job. Brent Key, does a tremendous job down there. Georgia Tech, they're going to be a good football team, and they're very physical up front on the defensive line and the offensive line. And Haynes King returns a quarterback, so that'll be fun to watch. When that game, we go down there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Notre Dame's here. We go down there. I actually may go to that game in Atlanta. That's not a difficult drive, or just jump on a flight and get down there very quickly. So I actually may go to that game for an away game. And then last game, Miami. That 3-game stretch, you got quite a bit of games right there. You have those 3, Louisville, and I'm going to say West Virginia because it's the backyard brawl. Respect the brawl. Respect the rivalry games, but Pitt should still win that game, and I've been saying that the entire time. If they don't, you guys, I can tell you this right now, guys. If we do not win that game, I am probably going to be calling for Pat Narduzzi's job all year, because that's absolutely ridiculous. Year 2 of this offense, you have Eli Holstein, who you've paid over $1 million for. You've got Desmond Reed, who's an All-American. You've got guys like Kenny Johnson, Deuce Spann, Blue Hicks, C.J. Lee, Raphael Poppy Williams, Tony Kinsler, Zion Fowler looks to be a guy. As long as he develops a blocking assignments to where he actually wants to block. I think if he doesn't, because the more he don't block, he's not going to get into those games. And Pat Narduzzi talked about that. He's got to learn to block. If he doesn't want to block, he's not going to play. But overall, he's been making plays here this year as well. They've got the guys. And you saw the entire left side of the offensive line has been redone. Ryan Bayer back to right tackle, where he was just an absolute freak at the beginning of last year. B.J. Williams back. Lyndon Cooper back. Those are important additions. So I think overall, Anthony, to your point, the Louisville game is a big one. They win that game and they beat West Virginia like they're supposed to. You're sitting at 4-0 again. It's a massive, massive game. But just do not count out Jeff Brom, man. They beat us last year. Jeff Brom is a hell of an offensive coordinator, hell of a head football coach. But he's just a quarterback guru. I have him in that class of guys who just do a great job with quarterbacks. He's one of those guys. Lincoln Riley usually does a great job with quarterbacks, but he messed up and allowed Miller Moss to leave and go to Louisville. That's a dummy move on him. Besides that, Lincoln Riley does nothing good. I think when you look at quarterback gurus, they've just done a great job. Usually Hugh Freeze is one of those guys. He's done a good job with Jackson Arnold so far down at Auburn. We'll see what he does this year. But he's just in that group of quarterback gurus who just do a really good job, and I think they continually do that. And when Nick Saban had Lane Kiffin's another one of those guys. He's a great quarterback guru. I have him up there. Josh Heupel, another one of those guys. I've got Jeff Brom in that category. Hell, he went to a Big Ten title game at Purdue. Holy shit. My man, Matt Speck. Obviously, if you don't know Matt Speck, he does all the designs and the custom shoes for Pitt Athletics, the Steelers, all kinds of stuff. If you have not done so, make sure you follow him on Twitter and follow all of his great content. Join Laser. Sorry if you already covered it. Keep hearing about Blue Hicks. Think it could be a huge and quietly have a great trio in Kenny Johnson, Blue Hicks, and Poppy Williams. Matt, completely agree with you. And I think that Blue Hicks, I personally think, will probably at one point during the season be wide receiver number 2. I think that's how well he's playing, and his speed and how he runs. He's able to run by anybody. I think with him being a smaller guy, he's not going to run through anybody, but can certainly run by them or be able to be very shifty, because he's done a great job of being coachable by J.J. Lasser, the wide receiver coach at the University of Pittsburgh. He's done a good job of being very coachable and has done a much better job of route running. A lot of guys, Kenny Johnson last year was one of those guys that need to learn more about route running. He's done a good job, man. So Kenny Johnson, Blue Hicks, I think Deuce Spann's going to step up on the outside. I think Poppy Williams, and don't forget about C.J. Lee. I think C.J. Lee, he's back healthy. He's going to be a guy that, again, I think he plays a really good and vital role this year. And then Tony Kinsler and Zion Fowler. I think you guys, those are the guys to really watch at the wide receiver position this year. But great job. Great question there, Matt. Another question and another topic here tonight as we'll transition to it, and I had to talk about it here. The college football playoff. I saw the articles. I saw Ross Dellinger post about it. And again, if you guys are new, we got Big Ten people watching. We've got SEC people watching. We got Big 12 people watching along with the ACC. We do a lot of stuff with the ACC, but this is a major topic overall. The Big Ten is now trying to go from the 16 model, where it was eventually a 3-3. It was more of a 4-4. 2-2-1, so 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And yeah, then you had 3 at large bids. You had 3 at large bids at the end there. But now they want to do a 26 to 28 team model, potentially 28 teams. They want to do 7 Big Ten teams, 7 SEC teams, 5 ACC teams, 5 Big 12 teams, 2 group of 5 teams, and then 2 at-large teams. That's just, I mean, one, that would eliminate the championship games. That would eliminate, any of the conference championship games, because it's just you're adding more games. That's number one. The conference championship games are gone. Number two, you're adding a lot more games. I mean, that's like, you're pushing hardcore, like pretty much like an NFL season, pretty much. But also too, I just think that's too many teams. There's not 7 SEC teams that should be in a playoff. There's not 7 Big Ten teams that should be in a playoff. There's not 5 teams that should be in the ACC in the playoffs. There's not 5 teams in the Big 12 that should be in the playoffs. I think in the group of 5, maybe you can have 1 or 2, maybe have that discrepancy. Maybe, 1 is good enough. We saw Boise State struggle against Penn State last year. I just think there's too many teams. I think and for the Big Ten, they want those 7 teams in there because it allows them to gain more money through college football playoff money, because they're concerned about ESPN and SEC and getting more SEC teams in. The reality is, and I said it before, and we watched it last year, the minute Jim Harbaugh left, I said Michigan is no longer a threat in that conference. They beat Ohio State at the end of the year because it's the rivalry games. You never know about the rivalry games. And Ohio State should have won that game. Clearly was too cocky in that game, and they lost. But overall, that conference, I mean, the Big Ten at this point is really, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. Indiana had a good year, so maybe they were that 4th team. They faced Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame just whipped them up and down the field all game. It was never really a game. It wasn't even close. You watch that game and you just never once thought this is on the border where, Notre Dame could potentially lose this game. Never once, did you even feel that. I love the home games. In the playoffs, I loved the home games. Notre Dame had a home game. Texas had a home game. Penn State had a home game. That was so cool just to watch the pageantry across college football. And you had people watching because everyone had a shot to get in. But just 28 teams, it's like, holy shit, that's just too many teams. I love the 16 model where you had 5 plus 11. I truly believe in winning your conference. Winning your conference means something. But also, too, winning your conference should guarantee you a spot in the playoff, but then you seed them through, the best teams from 1 to 16. That's just my opinion. And I think a group of 5 teams should never have a bye week, ever. I'm sorry. The Power 4 is very different than the group of 5, whether they like that or not. Every group of 4, the Power 4, every conference is the same. There's a couple top heavy hitters, 2 or 3 top heavy hitters. The ACC has them, the Big Ten has them, the SEC has them. There's a lot of question marks about the Big 12. There's no power teams. There's no blue bloods. I think they're more of like all average teams. That's a different conference where they're fun to watch because they're all very much alike. You don't know who could win the conference every year because there's just no great team in there. There's some good to average teams there. And you look at them, okay, this makes a lot of sense why it's a lot of fun to watch, but there's no major dominant team in there, I think, that we've actually seen. You start to watch those bigger brands. I'm excited to watch this year in the ACC, North Carolina with Bill Belichick. Then you got Frank Reich over at Stanford. I don't expect Stanford to do anything this year. Andrew Luck. To all the Pitt fans out there, Nate Bynum is now the offensive coordinator and tight end coach at Stanford, so he'll be fun to cheer for and fun to watch. Tino Sunseri left Indiana to go to UCLA. He's now the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at UCLA. He's got Nico, who just transferred in from Tennessee, which also, I mean, why you would leave Tennessee to go to UCLA, I have no understanding why. That's just stupid. And you're making less money, which is crazy to think about, but that's just a fact. When you look at all these different teams, and it's good to see Pitt guys getting jobs there, here and there, but winning your conference means something. And the group of 5 teams should not get a bye week. When we watch that from the front, and I like the 16-team model because last year Clemson deserved to be in the ACC. SMU deserved to be in the ACC, go into the playoff. But also, the team that I think would have popped off in the playoff was Miami. And I think Miami should have been in. Watching Miami against Penn State was probably a better matchup because they had more firepower. And you watched SMU, they just were not ready to play in the cold. Kevin Jennings missed so many open receivers to start the game where they could have had a 17 to 14 point lead. And then he couldn't stop throwing pick sixes. The defense held him in the game for how long? SMU, which is shout out to their defense. We knew their defense was really good. I just think that the firepower on offense and playing the Cole was a little different. I would have loved to see Cam Ward in the playoffs, and I think they should have been in there. The ACC should have had 3 teams in there, just my opinion. And a 16-team playoff would have allowed that to happen. But, the number 1 draft pick in the country did not play in the playoffs. It is what it is. But the 16-team playoff, 5+11 model is the way to go, in my opinion. When you start having an invitational, it's great. You could probably have more matchups across the board where, if you're playing more games, I guess, as long as you're in the top, the top 7 is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, that's half the freaking conference in the SEC. I mean, holy shit. So half the conference goes to the playoffs. I mean, what the shit? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. I think the 5+11 model, if they were trying to do the 16 model where you went, what was it, 4-4-2-2-1, why are you guaranteeing teams in? You just guaranteeing teams in is just not, for me, like not even American. I mean, you're just guaranteeing stuff in there. You might get other better non-conference games, I guess, because you can play bigger out of non-con games. But Ohio State's never scared to play anybody. That's why they're playing out of the conference and playing teams like Texas. Texas isn't scared. Pitt's certainly not scared. They've had Notre Dame on the schedule. They've had West Virginia on the schedule, Tennessee on the schedule. They got Wisconsin on the schedule. I mean, you have teams like that. And then you have other teams where they're just like Indiana canceled games against UVA to go play Kennesaw State, the school of the blind. I mean, I just, you watched their schedule last year. Indiana didn't face anybody to Ohio State until they lost, and then they make the playoffs, and then it's never even a ball game after that. No one ever talked about their schedule, which was absolutely horrid. I mean, UCLA was horrible last year. USC was horrible. Rutgers was horrible. Minnesota was horrible. I mean, Iowa was winning that side of the division, the West Side division, by scoring 1 to 2 touchdowns a game. I mean, that's absolutely mind-blowing. It shouldn't happen. And I think that guaranteeing spots in the playoff besides a conference champion is just ludicrous. Sometimes you're going to have the SEC have more teams that should make the playoffs. Sometimes you're going to have more teams in the Big Ten make the playoffs. Sometimes you're going to have more than 2 or 3 teams in the ACC that should make the playoffs. And sometimes you may have the Big 12 where they're going to have 2 or 3 different teams. Arizona State pops off last year and they make the playoffs. Had a hell of a ball game where they were starting to almost get blown out against Texas, and all of a sudden, Cam Scattaboo, man, he comes out of nowhere and just starts busting people up. I mean, just starts running people over. Incredible football plays. All of a sudden, we're down to the final stretch where it's a 1-score game. You're going to have those games. But I think that you start doing 26 to 28 teams, or you start doing this invitational where, the SEC and the Big Ten are already making more money. And then on top of that, you're going to allow them to get 4 guaranteed bids. And then people are like, well, at least the ACC gets 2 guaranteed bids, and the Big Ten, the Big 12 gets 2 guaranteed bids. That's great. But then, okay, the other games, one, Notre Dame has to hate it because they have to be within the top 16 to even get in because they're not in a conference. That's bad for them. They hate that model. And then on top of that, let's say Notre Dame gets in. You've got 2 more larges, right? So you have 4 and 4, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So you have 3 extra spots. Notre Dame gets in, so you have 2 at-large bids. They're going to go to the SEC or the Big Ten. Call a spade a spade. And I think Miami would have certainly had a case. Probably ACC would have had 3 teams in. The Big 12 would have probably still had 1 team in. But at the end of the day, you're the guaranteeing of teams is just absolute bullshit. And then getting more teams in than certain conferences is absolute bullshit. It just should not happen. I just don't agree with it. And I think that the 5+11 model is the way to go. And I think that the College Football Playoff Committee, that potentially needs to go. I think you need to start going to a computerized system to where you take the human, and obviously there's a lot of good human elements to where people are picking teams, but there's a lot of favoritism sometimes towards the SEC. Hell, we watched it in the college World Series. That was another one. We saw how many teams get in there, and then they absolutely sucked throughout the year. My team, I love them. The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers went to the College World Series. They were just beating the living crap out of every team. And then obviously Florida just flopped everywhere. I mean, you saw a number of teams flop. And then in the college football playoff last year, Tennessee just got absolutely just crushed. It was never even a game. They should have never been in the playoff last year. There was no conversation about that. 16 teams is good enough, and the 5+11 model is the way to go, in my opinion. Pitt man hailed to Pitt. Is there any chance Pitt loses to Duquesne? No. If there is, we got problems, and I mean serious problems, where Pitt's Pat Narduzzi's on the hot seat right away. But no, we should not have an issue with Duquesne, I can tell you that. Speedy Tortoise, winning your conference should definitely mean something, like it or not. There's a bias in the rankings. The more that can be done to let teams decide their own fate, the better. Couldn't agree more. And that's why I love the 5+11 model, but also the human element stuff has to get out of it, because there's so much favoritism towards the SEC to some of these teams. It's pretty crazy. The SEC hasn't been deep enough in recent years to put half the contenders in the playoffs. I couldn't agree more. Every year when I look at some of these football teams, like even Alabama last year, they were arguing and bitching and complaining. Like, brother, you lost to a 6-6 Oklahoma team that last year, I think Oklahoma's going to be a lot better this year. I think they're a top 5 SEC team potentially this year, or even maybe just outside the top 5. But like, they lost to a 6-6 Oklahoma team. Didn't score one touchdown in Norman. They lost to a Vanderbilt team, a 6-6 Vanderbilt team. Vanderbilt is like, I don't care what they do. They're the worst team in the SEC. You lost to the 2 worst teams in the SEC. You can't go in the playoffs. I don't want to hear about, the SEC is so much harder. Like, no, because if it was, they would win every game out of conference. They just didn't do it. So I don't want to hear it. The teams that I always look at in the SEC right now is, Texas. Texas is up there right now. Georgia, Kirby Smart's up there. Texas, Georgia. I'd even put Ole Miss up there. They even had bad losses. But your 2 guaranteed teams are really right now Texas and Georgia. Alabama, if they can get back there at times, we'll see what they look like. Obviously, with Nick Saban no longer ever there, they were always a guaranteed team during that time period. But they're no longer a guaranteed team. I really have the 2 guaranteed teams out of the SEC are Texas and Georgia. Ole Miss is starting to create a case, but they had bad losses last year. I saw a ranking recently that had like Florida, the Florida Gators in the top 25. What the hell have they done in the past 10 years? They've been just a horrific program. Like, they should never be in the top 25 until they prove it. That's been a crazy one. I think the top 3 teams, if you really wanted to put certain teams in there, I think overall, you got just Georgia and Texas at the top. And then let everybody else decide from there. Tennessee may have better years there. They're on the bubble there. Tennessee's on the bubble. Ole Miss is on the bubble. Oklahoma's on the bubble. You have those teams that are there, but your 2 guaranteed teams are Texas and Georgia. Alabama's on the bubble until they prove what they're like without Nick Saban there. Because I can tell you this: when Nick Saban was there, the 3 guaranteed teams I would see in the playoff every year for sure: Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. Those were your 3 teams automatically every year. But without Nick Saban, Alabama has not looked the same. They've certainly had bad losses. So we'll see. RJC Man 38. Miami had refs save them at Cal, and 2 other games that should have been losses. Miami overrated every year. At the end of the day, against the Cal game, people could talk about the calls all they want. They came back there pretty well. We've seen teams go through there how many different times. Now, they did lose games that they shouldn't have lost. But I think overall, with how their offense was playing and how their offense was clicking, I think they would have put up a better fight against Penn State than SMU. SMU, if they would have played down south, I think they would have probably had a better chance to win some of those ball games. But to your point, RJC, man, they are normally overrated every year. That's a fact. They haven't won the ACC in whatever, right? I think if I'm not mistaken, they have never won the ACC ever. So to your point, the majority of years, they are overrated. But this year, like last year, they played really well. This year, we'll have to watch them. Carson Beck is certainly not Cam Ward. I can promise you that right now. But they certainly have make things very competitive with Pitt. They've beaten Pitt numerous times. Pitt has beaten them times where just been, Pitt blew them out in Miami multiple times. But that's just going to be a great game overall up here, especially too at Acrisure Stadium. I know that'll be a fun game to watch for sure. But good comment, RJ. I appreciate that. And you've got a very good point there. Normally, they are certainly overrated. But the college football playoff should be 5+11. The 5 conference champions between your Power 4, your 1 group of 5, the highest ranking group of 5, and then your 11 at large bids. Because sometimes, again, conferences will change where one conference will be a lot better than the other 3 sometimes as years go on. Sometimes it'll switch from the SEC to the Big Ten. Sometimes it'll switch to the Big Ten to the ACC. Sometimes it'll be just the SEC and the Big Ten, or just the SEC. It's just a fact. So I think the 5+11 model is the way to go. But 28 teams, I mean, 110%. Your conference championship games are out. I mean, you're done. I mean, they're those you cannot play those with that many people that are in the playoffs. I just think it's just too much. It just waters it down. And also, it's not like it's baseball or basketball. That's a physical toll on the players, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're getting paid. They're getting paid like professionals. So it's a job to them now. So, and I agree with that. If you're getting paid millions of dollars, it's a job, and you gotta show up. And if you're not playing hard, you should be fined. If you're not playing hard, you should be benched. All those things still apply. But it is certainly shown that these guys, I mean, that's a physical toll, man. I mean, you'd have numerous rounds in that. I mean, that's a lot of games, to say the least. I don't see any super chats here. Don't see any more comments. We're 51 minutes in here, guys. See if we have any more comments here as we run through here. Really hit all the topics I wanted to hit tonight. Scrimmage going on right now. I would think at 9:03, they're probably close to finishing up, I would think. If not, they're already done. We talked about Allen Greene. Again, I love the Allen Greene comment, the front porch. You guys, which also is pretty funny because now that I hear them saying it now, it's like, okay, hey, I've been saying that now for a while, because I've heard it from a number of people that I know in the SEC, and they've told me numerous of times. It is 100%, the front porch of a university. Prime example, and I use this example all the time. TCU, they went to the college football playoff. Their applications went up 219%. Do you think it goes up 219% without going to the college football playoff? No. It's 100% a fact. I just investing in football and being good at football, basketball is another, is important to the university. And I think that anybody, and you can hear this from me, anybody that I've talked to in the athletic department has told me straightforward, 110%, they are 100% using the $20.5 million in revenue sharing. How they decipher that out will be different. That'll be certainly be talked about. And I love the comment from Allen Greene. He's like, football is going to get what it needs to be successful, which is a great comment. Also, it was great to hear him say, from anybody I talked to, Joan Gable gets it. That's why she brought in Allen Greene, who's more of a business acumen than what we've had in the past, being able to raise money, more donations. The Panther Club released that recently, that it was the most donations in the Panther Club history and the Athletic Directors Fund history, which it's only been a couple years now with the Athletic Directors Fund. That's a tax-deductible one for massive donors and major donors and contributors. They've certainly loved that. But Allen Greene even said, that's great. We broke a record. That's here for me. We want to take it to here. So we want to go from being, hey, we broke a record. That's great. We go from here to here. And that's where you start to see the massive progress when it comes to donations, because you need those donations. You need the revenue. And again, this is also another one that I've heard. I don't know when it will be released, but it will be released at some point. The new Victory Heights, it's on schedule. It's on budget, which is really great. I actually have a friend that works on that site, by the way, for everybody that does not know. I have a friend that works on that site. He just said, he's like, Jay, the building is just, it's state of the art. He's like, holy shit. He's like, they put money into that, brother. And he's like, it's very nice. The good thing about that is, from people I've talked to, from the sources that I've gotten, expect naming rights. That is the next major thing to happen at the University of Pittsburgh and Allen Greene. Naming rights on the Victory Heights new building. And do not be shocked, the Peterson Event Center is no longer the Peterson Event Center. I would expect it to change, have a name change eventually, where there's going to be naming rights there. That's going to be the next one. Naming rights on the Victory Heights building, on the Peterson Event Center, and then eventually, I think even on the baseball field, from what I was hearing, is that there's potentially going to be a massive donor that goes into having naming rights over a 5-year period. So get ready to hear about that too, which, if you're wondering, naming rights bring in millions and millions of dollars every year. So that's a massive factor for sure. Let me see here. Could they get rid of all SES games in Week 10 to start playoffs? No, RJC, man, I don't see that happening. And honestly, I hope it doesn't happen, because I don't mind having one FCS game a year, because you pay those schools to come in. Like, for instance, when you bring those schools in, it helps fund their athletic department. They get paid, $1 million, $1.2, $1.3 million to go play those games, and it helps fund their, their athletic department. I like that because it's important for those schools. And I don't want to cut that from those schools. But then also too, I like how the ACC, like the Big Ten's talking about 9 conference games. Like, sorry, Big Ten, your conference is not that deep. There's a lot of bad teams in your conference. I like the model of 8 conference games because then you have 4 non-con games. And as you guys have seen Pitt, they've had usually 1 FCS team, 1 group of 5, and then 2 Power 4s. Just like this year, they've got Notre Dame and West Virginia on the schedule. That's 10 Power 4 conference games, guys. 10 Power 4 games. Central Michigan's a group of 5, and then 1 FCS team. Go look at the numerous Big Ten teams who've got 9 Power 4 games, and then that's it. Don't even want to hear it from them. It's horrible. It's an absolute joke how they're stacking games where they have like multiple FCS games or multiple group of 5 games and then 1 FCS game. It's just ridiculous. Or 2 FCS games and 1 group of 5. Like, that's horrible. I'm excited in future schedules. If you guys haven't seen it yet, that's actually another comment I wanted to bring up. I'm so glad, guys. I'm so glad you guys brought up the schedule because I'm going to be talking about that here real quick as I can pull it up here. The future schedules have been updated. 2 new teams have been added to the future schedules as I was able to look at them. Going to share my screen with you guys here in a second. There. All right, there we go. Cancel out of this here. Move back over to here. All right, there we go. All right. So for you guys that don't follow along to everything that happens here, Pitt, if I can move this out of here for a second. There we go. Pitt has added 2 new teams. So 2025, here we are. Here's our 4: Duquesne, Central Michigan, West Virginia, Notre Dame. In 2026, Miami of Ohio, UCF, and Wisconsin. They added in 2026 Miami. In 2027, they added Western Michigan. In 2027, Pitt goes to Dublin, Ireland. This counts as a home game for Pitt. Wisconsin will get their game in 2028, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, 2026 will be at Wisconsin. 2027 will be the Dublin, Ireland game, which will be a huge factor. That'll be a heck of a game. I know a lot of Pitt fans are going to that game. That'll be a huge travel game. But 2026, we got Miami, UCF, and Wisconsin. So they added Miami. So, I don't expect the backyard brawl to come back in 2026 because they've already got two P4 teams. 2027, Wisconsin, Western Michigan, and UConn. How about that? UConn is on the schedule, but they added Western Michigan back on the schedule. We faced them before in 2021. They're back on the schedule. But UConn, that'll be a fun game, a revival of the old Big East. Wisconsin, Western Michigan, UConn. In 2028, they added another team, Northern Illinois. If you're wondering there, you probably saw the tweet going around. The head football coach at Northern Illinois is actually really good friends with Pat Narduzzi. They have a real good history going back. Mac Canada, there's a huge good coaching carousel that's going through there. So they're actually really good friends with Pat Narduzzi and a number of people at Pitt. So they added Northern Illinois. So in 2028, Northern Illinois, UConn, and Notre Dame. UConn, this will be an interesting one here. The UConn games are in October 30th and November 4th at the end, towards the end of the season, which is going to be pretty cool. I'm actually pretty excited about that. But for people who are wondering, I know West Virginia fans were constantly talking about, well, Pitt has room on their schedule. They're going to be able to have a game. They're going to be able to move things around. I told people before they didn't have any room, and you can see now they don't have any room to add those teams and to add those games in there. But going forward here, Miami, UCF. UCF is back on the schedule, a Big 12 team. Wisconsin out of the Big 10. Wisconsin, Western Michigan, UConn, Northern Illinois, UConn, Notre Dame back on the schedule. In 2029, their schedule's full. Delaware, the revival of the backyard brawl again. So 1, 2, 3, a 3-year break of the backyard brawl. Then back to the backyard brawl here. This will be a home game in 2029. Delaware, West Virginia, UCF at UCF, and then Richmond at home. And in 2030, they still have 2 spots open. You got West Virginia and Toledo. I expect here by 2029 and 2030, I expect a lot of changes potentially to who's leading Pitt football potentially, and then seeing who's actually leading Pitt football at that point. We'll see. And again, just putting that out there, we'll see exactly what happens. But there we go here. So that'll be interesting. But 2 new teams on there, Western Michigan and Northern Illinois. So you guys have seen a number of different takes there. Any information on fall camp position change? I heard that Tyree Robertson was getting looks at running back. Yeah, Gary, he was getting looks there. I think he can certainly play wide receiver and running back. I think they're just, again, they're moving 2 guys around at multiple places because it's a depth at running back. And again, that's just very irritating to me because they knew they needed a running back. And just Narduzzi didn't want to get a running back. I'm very upset about that. I think that's bad recruiting overall. That's bad roster management, which is also another reason why they need an in-house GM. But obviously he's being naive that he says he doesn't need a GM and that they're probably going to promote 2 people to co-GMs. I would think Graham Wilbert and Coultry. I think those 2 will probably be the de facto GMs, which I just, I don't agree with. I think it should be 1 GM and it should be in-house, and I'm just not liking how Narduzzi handling that. And I think Allen Greene has been very, I think in a good way, very lethargic in terms of not telling people what he thinks. But from my understanding behind the scenes, he wants an in-house GM. And I think he's probably going to have a conversation with Narduzzi and probably try to force his hand there. That'll be talked about. Let's see here. But to your point, Gary, I would not be shocked if they have an injury there. I would not be shocked if he moves over to running back. 100%. But also, too, I think he's doing a good job at wide receiver right now, but there seems to be a lot of guys at wide receiver, so maybe they see him as more of a guy who can get time at running back. That's fine there as well. I mean, I could see him playing running back as well, but you just got to watch throwing guys around in multiple positions who have never played it before, but that's Pitt for you. Mumfield, dark horse for a good rookie season in the NFL. Anthony, I think that, again, we saw him get his another touchdown in the NFL last night. He's going to be a guy he's going to make the team. I think he's that good, and we knew that about Konate and Mumfield. A great route runner, was very underrated going in there as an undrafted guy. I think he's going to do a tremendous job. Let's see here, Sean. If the players are being paid and it's like a job, why can't they opt out of playing in a bowl game? Sean, I think that's going to, because one, they can opt out because there's no contracts. You can't tell a kid what to do if there's no contract. But now with revenue sharing, I think that eventually now we're starting to see more and more contracts. If there's a contract signed, I bet you they're going to have something in there that, that says, hey, they have to play the bowl game. I think that's going to happen here pretty soon, Sean. Pitman Zach 94, Mumfield, late 7th round pick. You're correct. I just looked it up here. Mumfield was an underrated 7th round pick, and he's going to make that team. I think he's going to be a huge benefactor for the Los Angeles Rams. And McVay is a master guy with wide receivers and being able to get them the football. So shout out to Konate and Mumfield. He's going to have a damn good season with the LA Rams, in my opinion. And you're starting to see it just unfold how well he can just route run, get open, and catch the football. So, but to Sean, to your point here, if you don't have a contract and you have nothing written down, they're just getting paid. They're just getting paid money. They can do whatever the hell they want. There's no contract. But now, if they finally have contracts going forward, which we have been very open about that really needs to happen, then they have to play those games. But until we start to see contracts with every single player, they can opt out of anything they want. You can't. What can you do? It's that simple. That's been the craziest part about. That's been the craziest part about this whole NIL shit. It's been so cattywampus and so spread. They need more rules. They need more guardrails to say, okay, here are the rules. Here are the guidelines. I think that we'll probably see that going forward. I was hoping FCF games would be spring season for transfers and early freshman players so FCS could get paid. Potentially, but I think with the games that are still on there, they'll still play them during the fall. I think what you're going to see, RJC Man 38, you're going to see more spring games are not going to be against each other. You're going to see spring games be against other teams, like for instance, Robert Morris. If Duquesne's not on the schedule, they'll play Duquesne. Don't be shocked if you see like West Virginia come up when they're not on the schedule, having them come up here to play. Also, Delaware, they'll come up here and play. Maybe Maryland from the Big Ten because they're close by. You can have Big Ten schools, Penn State, stuff like that. You're going to see, guys, I'm telling you, probably next year, you'll probably start to see teams, Youngstown State, you'll probably see teams start doing inter-squad games for the spring games, which would be very enticing. And then you charge for admission to go into those games. You'll see a lot of different stuff, and you'll see a lot of good games there. I think that's a huge, huge thing because, one, it helps the players and it helps each team out because instead of having 22 guys out there all at once and more of a risk for someone to get injured, you're only having 11 out there at once, and you have a much more controlled environment. I think it's going to be massive. So RJ Seaman, get ready to watch other teams come into Acrisure Stadium for those games. Just my opinion. Since you brought it up, without bringing any hypothetically speaking, how many high-profile names would you would want the head job at Pitt? Can you name any of them? Speedy, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a Power 4 job. Pitt certainly pays. Pat Narduzzi is the third highest paid football coach in the ACC. Makes roughly a little more than after incentives, a little more than $7 million. What's even crazier, he made more money than Marcus Freeman did last year. That's wild in itself. He made more money than Marcus Freeman. But we certainly pay there. We certainly pay our assistants very well. A number of people would want that job. And I know there are, I'm not going to release any names, because obviously, we do have a head football coach right now. So there's no reason to throw names out there. But there are a couple guys in the NFL that I know that would want that job, that I know personally that would want that job. There are guys in the SEC that I know would want that job because their relationship with Allen Greene. I know that for a fact. And there's a couple guys within the Big Ten and even guys in the group of five. And if there's one name that I could really throw out there, or two names that are in the group of five that have been dying for the right position to jump into the Power 4, is Bobby Chesney down at JMU. He's done a really good job down there. Jason Candle from Toledo. Those guys, I think, are waiting for the right job. They get Power 4 offers every year. And anybody that I talk to, they're connected to those two guys. They have gotten offers after offer after offer from the Power 4. Those two guys, especially now that Bobby Chesney took over for Kurt Signetti. He had offers last year. He just didn't want to leave. But there are a number of SEC coordinators and Big Ten coordinators that want jobs at the head coaching position, and they want it in the Power 4. I can tell you that right now. Not going to tell you the names of it because it's just, we got a head coach. No reason to talk about that. JJ, are the injuries devastating? We'll talk about that more next week. I mean, you'll probably hear about it on Tuesday when Narduzzi talks about it. Steve Irwin's son announced the pick. That's cool. What tier bowl does Pitt have to make this year? Just another December bowl is not going to cut it. Agree or disagree? I mean, if you're looking at bowl games, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, what they have, how many games? New Year's Six bowls. I think there's no more New Year's Six bowls besides in the playoff. I mean, a December bowl game is really all the bowl games besides the college football playoffs. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. I mean, I'm not looking at the bowl game. I'm looking, the bowl game can be a New Year's Six bowl, or they need to win 9+ games. And I've said that before. They have to win 9+ games this year. The bowl game stuff you guys can worry about, but I mean, I'm looking at total wins. 9+ in the regular season, and then the bowl game. I don't care what bowl game it is. If they win the bowl game, it's 10+ wins. That's a successful season. That's kind of what I look at. At the end of the day, if you win 9+ games, you're going to be going to a good bowl game anyways, and the majority of them are in December. So I mean, there's like the college football playoff is what's in December and in January. That would be like saying that's a December bowl game, but at the end of the day, they need to win 9+ games this year to be a successful season in the regular season. No less than 9-3, and then win the bowl game to get to 10 wins. That's my opinion. And I'm going to be very harsh about that. 9+ wins, 9 wins in the regular season, the 10th win in the bowl game. And I do believe they're going to be fighting for the ACC championship game this year. There'll be some stuff here we'll get to watch, obviously. There's some holes. I think they have holes on their team between running back and then potentially some injuries that we'll find out on Tuesday. When Narduzzi talks to the media about season-ending injuries, as he's talked about that we saw on Friday when he talked to the media, he said he'll put the list together on a bunch of guys that they're going to be dinged up or out for the year. He'll be talking about that next week, probably on Tuesday. Monday, they're more than likely off. So they'll certainly talk about that. Guys, we're now 10 minutes in. It's been another great show. Cannot thank you guys enough. I don't see any super chats. Cannot thank you enough for another great episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, tremendous comments as always. The show is what it is because of each and every one of you. Guys, we are 2 weeks away from Pitt versus Duquesne at Acrisure Stadium. Football season is finally upon us, guys. And again, I cannot wait to meet every one of you guys at the stadium, in the parking lots, tailgating. We'll certainly be there. I'll certainly be there at every home game this year, and it will certainly be one hell of a time going forward. Guys, cannot thank you enough for, again, watching the show, watching the pod. And it's another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail the ACC. I'll see you next time.